Now, the United States, considered a global superpower, has seen President Trump lose his composure after failing to pressure the Iranians into submission. Taking a harsher stance on Iran, Trump resorted to aggressive and offensive language, issuing threats on social media. In a strongly worded and controversial statement, he warned that if Iran does not back down, the U.S. would target and destroy Iran's power plants and bridges. In a new warning, Trump also extended his previous 24-hour deadline and stated that instead of Monday, severe action against Iran would come on Tuesday. He added that Tuesday would become a destruction day for Iran's infrastructure, including its bridges. However, after the heated remarks, something appeared to calm Trump down. Shortly afterwards, in another statement, he sounded more hopeful, saying that an agreement with Iran could be reached as early as today, Monday. The 10-day deadline Trump had given Iran is set to expire today, April 6th. Then, just hours later, his tone shifted, saying a deal with Iran could still happen as early as today. Now Iran's response, clear and firm. They've rejected the temporary ceasefire proposal mediated by Pakistan. Iranian officials also said they won't reopen the Strait of Hormuz for a short-term deal and don't believe the U.S. is serious about a lasting ceasefire. Bottom line, serious threats, sudden softening, but Iran is not backing down. Following a tweet by Donald Trump accusing Iran of full-scale aggression, Iran rejected the proposed deal and responded by launching a heavy wave of ballistic missiles toward Israel. Now, move what happened in the last 24 hours. The evening began with the Israeli military issuing an urgent warning to residents across northern Israel, instructing people to seek shelter immediately as Iran launched a new barrage of missiles. Sirens rang out across the region, including in Haifa, Israel's third largest city, a major industrial and port hub sitting on the slopes of Mount Carmel along the Mediterranean coastline. More than 10 sites were struck within Haifa alone in this latest round of attacks. Photographs and video footage from the ground showed structural damage to buildings and streets, including one striking image of a car engulfed in flames on a Haifa road. Initial reports indicated no casualties from those early strikes, a reflection perhaps of the country's vast investment in civil defense infrastructure and its missile interception systems, which have intercepted hundreds of incoming projectiles since this conflict began in late February. But the picture grew considerably darker as the night progressed. A single heavy ballistic missile, with a warhead reportedly weighing in the region of 450 kilograms, struck a 5-story residential building directly. The impact was catastrophic. Half the building was destroyed outright. The remaining half was left in such a precarious structural state that it threatened to collapse entirely, severely complicating the urgent search and rescue operation that was immediately launched. Israel's National Emergency Service confirmed that 11 people had been injured as a direct result of the missile strike on Haifa. One of those injured was in critical condition, the direct victim of the missile's impact on that apartment block. 4 other individuals were treated for shock, a figure that speaks to the psychological toll these relentless attacks extract from civilian populations, even when physical casualties are comparatively limited. Most harrowing of all, 4 people were unaccounted for, all of them from apartments in the section of the building that took the heaviest blow. Search and rescue teams worked through the night and into the early hours of Monday morning. Their task was made harder by the structural instability of what remained standing. Every step into the wreckage carried the risk of triggering a collapse that could kill rescuers, along with any survivors still trapped beneath. By the time morning approached, 2 bodies had been recovered. 2 people remained missing. A city held its breath. The warhead's reported size, 450 kilograms, is worth dwelling on. This was not a misfired rocket or an improvised weapon. It was a purpose-built, heavy ballistic missile aimed at a populated neighborhood in the middle of the night. Haifa has found itself on the front line with uncomfortable frequency in this war. The city's strategic importance, its port, its refineries, its role as a logistics hub for northern Israel makes it a natural target. It also sits within range not only of Iranian ballistic missiles, but of rockets fired by Hezbollah from across the Lebanese border, just a few dozen kilometers to the north. For the people of Haifa, the threat is not theoretical. It arrives without warning and often. In a formal military statement, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps announced what it described as the 97th wave of retaliatory operations against what Tehran calls the American-Israeli coalition. Missiles and drones, it said, had been deployed against strategic targets. That figure, the 97th wave, is itself a striking piece of context. It means that since this war began on February 28th, there has been, on average, more than one significant Iranian retaliatory operation every single day. The cadence of this conflict is not that of occasional flare-ups separated by long periods of cold tension. It is relentless. It is grinding. And on both sides, the human and material costs are accumulating at a rate that few anticipated when hostilities first broke out. Sunday night's Iranian attack came in 3 distinct waves and involved more than 10 missiles in total, including at least one equipped with a fragmenting warhead, a type specifically designed to scatter shrapnel across a wide area, maximizing casualties and structural damage rather than concentrating explosive force on a single point. Sirens were triggered not only in northern Israel, but in parts of central Israel as the missiles tracked their trajectories southward. One additional casualty connected to the night's events deserves mention. A woman in her 90s, injured while rushing to take shelter when the siren sounded, was reported to be in serious condition. It is a detail that captures something essential about the human reality behind the military statistics. This is a woman who has lived through the founding of Israel, through multiple wars, through decades of conflict in this region, now running for her life in the dark in her 10th decade. While Iran was firing at Israel, American and Israeli forces were striking Iran. Reports from multiple Iranian news agencies painted a devastating picture of what happened in eastern Tehran and in the city's Baharistan County. Iran's Mehr news agency reported that a U.S.-Israeli strike hit a residential area in eastern Tehran, killing at least 4 people and wounding 7 others. 3 residential units were completely destroyed in the attack, while 50 other buildings sustained serious damage. Rescue workers were still searching through the rubble for survivors when these reports came through. Iran's government spokesperson offered a broader accounting of the destruction since the war began. According to official statements, more than 100,000 civilian sites across Iran have been affected by strikes since February 28th. Dozens of universities, schools, and research facilities have also been damaged. Whether those figures are precise or inflated for domestic and international audiences, the underlying reality is not in dispute. Iranian civilian infrastructure has been hit repeatedly and extensively since this war began. The night's violence was not confined to Iranian missiles and Israeli-American airstrikes. Lebanon's Hezbollah announced a series of operations targeting Israeli forces and positions along the northern border, opening what amounts to a coordinated second front on the same night. Hezbollah said it deployed explosive devices targeting Israeli forces near the town of Shamaa in southern Lebanon. When what it described as an Israeli rescue force arrived at the scene, Hezbollah opened fire on that force as well, an approach that critics characterize as an exploitation of humanitarian operations, and that Hezbollah frames as legitimate battlefield engagement against a military adversary. The group also carried out rocket attacks targeting Israeli army positions and troop concentrations near the town of Ainada, as well as areas east of the Qiyam detention center, a site with its own layered and painful history in this conflict. Rockets were additionally fired towards the northern Israeli towns of Nahariya and Metula, civilian population centers, not military installations. And in what may prove to be the most militarily consequential of Hezbollah's overnight operations, the group announced it targeted the Meron Air Operations Command and Control Base in northern Israel. Strikes on command and control infrastructure, if effective, carry considerably more strategic weight than rockets aimed at towns. We are still awaiting full assessment of what damage, if any, was inflicted there. Hezbollah's operations that night represent exactly what the Israeli military has long warned about, a multi-front war in which Iran's network of allied armed groups are all active simultaneously, stretching Israel's defensive capacities and forcing it to contend with multiple threats at once. No honest analyst can predict with confidence where this goes from here. But several dynamics seem likely to define the coming days and weeks. On the military front, Israeli and American forces will continue targeting what they describe as Iran's missile manufacturing capacity, military infrastructure, and command structures. Iran will continue its retaliatory operations. The 97th wave will be followed by a 98th and then a 99th, unless something fundamentally changes. The core question is whether either side has a theory of how this ends, what a ceasefire looks like, what negotiations would require, and who in the world has the standing and the relationships to broker them. At present, I see no visible off-ramp. On the energy front, the Hormuz threat is now explicitly, publicly on the table. Global markets have been volatile, but the strait remains open. If that changes, even temporarily, even partially, the economic consequences would be felt around the world, most severely in Asia, which depends on Gulf exports for a significant portion of its energy supply. On the humanitarian front, the civilian toll on both sides continues to rise, largely out of proportion to any military objective that can be clearly articulated. International aid organizations are warning of crisis conditions developing inside Iran. In northern Israel, communities living under repeated missile attack are experiencing a psychological and economic erosion that is difficult to quantify and impossible to ignore. And in Haifa, as Monday's dawn broke, rescuers were still working through the rubble of a destroyed building, looking for 2 people not yet found, trying to bring them home. That is where things stand. I will continue to update you as this situation develops. That is all from me for now. I hope this briefing gave you a clear picture of everything that unfolded overnight. If you found this helpful, please like this video and share it with others who want to stay informed. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. This situation is developing fast, and I will be back very soon with the latest. Until then, take care of yourselves, stay safe, and I will see you in the next video.